Welcome back, my friends. I am super excited about this one, but before we even get started, let me introduce you real quick to the actual star of today's video. I know that was a little dramatic, but I hope I got your attention now. This beside me is the Magnum Industrial Deluxe Heavy-Duty 14-inch wood-cutting bandsaw. Now, Magnum Industrial is a brand that is being sold by KMS Tools, and if you're not familiar with that brand, don't worry, you're not alone, so let me shed some light on that. One brand you probably do know is General Manufacturing. Now, these iconic Canadian-made machines still can be found in many high school woodworking shops and are known for their heavy-duty quality and reliability, which also makes them sought-after machines in the used market. Producing woodworking machinery is a tough business, and after decades, the challenges of hard regulations for the foundry in Quebec and the financial pressure involved to keep things running led to the decision to move the production to Taiwan. It is important at this point to mention that manufacturing something in Taiwan is not the same as manufacturing something in China. Taiwan has much higher standards and they're just known for super precise components, and they have much higher quality control standards, which is why almost all of the big players have a foot in there, so just keep that in mind. With the move to a new location, the brand name changed as well from General Manufacturing to General International. Now, initially this seemed to work out, but then the company was sold, the strategies of the new owner didn't work out, and the increasing pressure from competing brands eventually forced General International to their knees. And that is when KMS Tools, a Canadian and family-operated company with 14 stores across BC and Alberta, decided to take on the new ownership. They started with a clean slate and a new brand name, Magnum Industrial. Now, to make that transition as smooth and effective as possible and to help develop the new Magnum Industrial line, KMS Tools actually hired a senior manager who was previously 25 years with General Manufacturing and General International. Now, why is any of this so important? Because you need to understand that the folks from KMS Tools and Magnum Industrial, they are no rookies, they are experts in their field and they keep building on decades of experience. Now, because KMS Tools owns Magnum Industrial, they created a very unique situation where they cut out all the middlemen. Well, guess what? That allows them to offer you very competitive pricing. Actually, in my personal opinion, the price-performance ratio leaves the competition far behind, so they're really worth to be checked out. By the way, if you own a General International machine and need spare parts, reach out to KMS Tools. There's a very good chance those guys can help you. Now, enough of all the history, let's talk about the saw. So this bandsaw comes in a well put together protective crate, and I recommend to take your time with the assembly. Plan in at least half a day. Give yourself some time, don't rush it, and most importantly, read the instruction manual. Don't even think about throwing this together without reading it. Luckily, unlike many other manuals these days, this one is actually written in a very clear and easy to understand English, and you will find a ton of little tips and tricks that will save you some head scratching. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to fully understand the tool before you use it. It's not only for your own safety, but also to protect your investment from accidental damage. Now, the table of the bandsaw comes covered with a thick layer of grease, and that is a good thing because it protects the cast iron surface from rusting in the time frame from when it leaves the factory until it's actually in your shop. That can take a while, and trust me, it's a lot easier to deal with some grease versus surface rust. Now, to remove it, I soaked the entire surface in brake cleaner, and I used a putty knife, some paper towels, and a cotton rag as well. After cleaning, I used a buffer to apply a thin layer of furniture wax that will protect the surface in the future and will make your workpiece slide over the table much easier. Now let's talk about some basic specifications. This model runs on a 1.5 horsepower motor that is very typical for a 14-inch bandsaw and plenty of power. The speed is set at 3250 feet per minute, but you can move the drive belt to a secondary set of pulleys if you prefer a slower speed at 2300 feet per minute. The saw can take blades that are 1/8 of an inch all the way up to 3/4 of an inch wide and 112 inch long. The frame is a solid one-piece welded steel frame, and it allows for a 13.5 inch maximum cutting width and an impressive 12 inch resaw capacity, which is probably more than I will ever need. It also features two 4-inch dust collection ports for dust-free operation and very easy to set ball bearing guides. Now if you're new to bandsaws, they can look intimidating, but it's much easier than you think. Just follow the operating manual. It's really just a matter of minutes to set them up properly. The only real issue I had during assembly was the insert plate just didn't want to fit, so I took a Dremel tool to remove the paint from the edges, and that seemed to work. But please don't do what I did, that was way too complicated, and I later on learned that those insert plates actually have tight tolerances on purpose, because the last thing you want is an insert plate in here that sits in there way too sloppy. And there's a much easier way to do fine adjustments. Because of the design of the slot that is open-ended on one side, all you have to do is take that plate, set it up on its edge, give it a couple gentle taps with the hammer. That will close up this gap just a little bit, and with that the circumference of the circle will be reduced, and just like that, in a matter of a couple seconds, you will have an insert plate that fits perfectly. One thing I absolutely love about this saw is that it came with this little kit, and it contains everything you need to rewire your saw from the standard 110 volt to 220 volt. Now bandsaws are exceptionally good for two tasks. One is cutting curves and the other one is resawing your stock material. Now if you just resaw a couple inch of material on the 110 volt version, you will be just fine. But if you start pushing the boundaries, let's say you try to resaw a 12-inch wide board, well, you start feeling the lack of power and torque. It's still doable, but it will take a while. So if that is something you see yourself doing a lot, it would make total sense to rewire the saw to 220 volt if you have the circuit for that in your workshop. And I know a lot of you guys don't, so that's what I just love about it, because Magnum Industrial really made sure to give you the maximum amount of flexibility. Another amazing feature about this bandsaw is the safety foot brake over here. Pretty much none of the other 14-inch bandsaws on the market that are available in the same price range of plus minus $2,000 Canadian have a safety foot brake. Now, of course, you have your normal off button over here, but let's take a look how long it actually takes for the blade to come to a complete stop if you use that. I know this was a silly example, but the point is, if something goes wrong up here and you try to stop your saw in an emergency with your normal off button, you will have to deal with a blade that keeps spinning for another 16 seconds. Now 16 seconds is a long time. That's more than enough time to not only cut through one of your fingers, but all of them. So don't underestimate the value of a safety foot brake in an emergency. And I say emergency on purpose because you should not use this as a primary mechanism to stop your saw. It's just not designed for that. Some parts in here will start to wear out prematurely, but if you get yourself in a bad situation here, safety foot brake is absolutely invaluable. Now if you're completely new to bandsaws, then chances are you're going to experience blade drift on some point. Now blade drift is when your saw blade slowly starts to change the direction while you're cutting, so it's drifting away from your line, and it's usually the result of the condition of your saw blade and the fine adjustment of your blade guides. But in some rare cases it can be the wood itself too, if you have some crazy grain going on or if you cut real close to a tight knot, for example. For those cases, Magnum Industrial provides you this little resaw guide. Now that's an accessory that can be attached to your fence. You just have to make sure to line it up with the center of your blade. Now what that does is, instead of using the entire parallel surface of your fence as a guide, you just use the small curved surface of your attachment as a guide. And with that, you can change the angle of your workpiece as you cut through it in order to compensate for any potential drift. Now with most saws on the market, this is an add-on that you have to pay extra for, so it's a really nice touch that this is already included with this saw.
The conclusion.
To sum this up, I think this bandsaw is the perfect all-rounder. And because of features like the emergency foot brake, it would be really well suited for high school woodworking shops as well. But what stands out the most to me personally is just the price. I could not find another 14-inch bandsaw on the market that offers so many features and such a high quality in the same price category. If you can dish out a little bit more money and if you have a 220-volt circuit in your workshop, then the Elite version of this bandsaw would be an even better choice, especially if you want to resaw a lot of big lumber. You will get a much bigger and more powerful motor, upgraded ceramic guides, a multifunction fence, and basically all the bells and whistles a bandsaw can offer. At this point, I would like to thank the entire KMS Tools and Magnum Industrial team. When I walked through our local store here in Prince George and this saw caught my eye, I was immediately convinced of its quality and I thought, wow, this really deserves a lot more attention. So I reached out to them, they supplied me with this bandsaw and made this entire video possible. So huge thanks again for supporting my channel. Now, if you want to check out some of their products for yourself, of course you will find all the links down in the video description. And while you're at it, go check out their 5-star Advantage plan. I usually get super annoyed with plans like this because it feels like a fishy marketing strategy with a lot of blah blah and really nothing behind it, and God knows I have no time for that. But that's not what this is. I guarantee you, you will not find another tool store in this country that offers you such great value combined in a free membership. Trust me, I spent way too many hours in research for this video to figure that out. Speaking of blah blah, enough of all the talk already, let's do something fun. Now for a very long time I'm storing this old leftover flooring up here, and I thought maybe we can do a little project that also shows the bandsaw in action. I have no idea what type of wood this is, but it's gotta be some sort of hardwood, and my thought was maybe I can remove the surface here, glue up a small block and try myself in power carving. Something I also wanted to do for a very long time, so let's see how it goes. You know what, considering that this was my first attempt to power carve something, I'm really happy with how it turned out. That old flooring was left outside for quite a while. You could see all this bolting, those darker lines in it, and I think that worked really well with the lionfish theme. It almost gave it a natural texture. Anyways, here's the thing. We have 2 cats and a dog, and to leave the fish like it is on the shelf with all those super fragile fins, it's just not a good idea. So I would like to build a stand for it with a protective plexiglass cover. For that, I will have to resaw some birch. So I'm just gonna go ahead and swap that 1/2 inch blade for a 3/4 inch blade. Basically, each time you try to resaw something, you would want to install the widest blade that your bandsaw can handle with the least amount of teeth per inch. Besides that, this blade really needs to be cleaned up. It gummed up pretty bad, wasn't cutting very well anymore. I should have waited longer for the wood glue to cure. I also got some nasty burn marks, but none of this is a big deal. All of this will take 5 minutes, so let's get it done. 95% of the complaints and problems people have with bandsaws are just a result of poor understanding for the tool. There's no saw blade out there that is perfectly suited for every job. If you want to use your bandsaw to its full potential, you will have to get used to swapping out the blade depending on the task on hand. And you will have to sit down and learn how to do all the fine adjustments. Don't blame your tool for not working properly if you haven't done your homework. Now, of course, things like the quick release blade tensioner and the blade tension indicator make the job a lot easier, and even small details like the clever designed doorknob speed up the whole process. Now, once you have fully internalized the whole sequence, you will be able to do this in under 3 minutes, and your saw will be ready to cut through your stock material like a hot knife through butter.